Our first presenter. Our first presenter is Sister Sade Henriques. Sister Sade is 23 years old. She has graduated in December 2022 with her bachelor's in psychology. She is currently pursuing her master's of science in health psychology and is expecting to graduate in May of 2024. Her ultimate goal, after attaining her PhD, is to become a clinical neuropsychologist. Presenting our first session today. I'm sorry, I forgot the title. I have it on my paper. I'm going to let her share the title with you when she comes forward. Please put your hands together and give the warmest welcome to Sister Sade Henriques in Jesus' name. Praise God, praise God, praise God.
Hello. Okay. Okay, so I will be talking to you all about the foundation of mental wellness in children and adolescents. So, can do the next slide. What we will be discussing, in case anyone is unfamiliar with the term or what it entails, will cover the standard definition and basic information of what mental health is. Next, we'll go into the foundations of what every child and adolescent needs for their mental health status to remain adequate. Next, we'll discuss how parents can help to promote well-being in their children, as well as support them in overcoming any obstacles that could possibly be to their detriment. I'm out of breath because I'm nervous, so 1 second. Then we'll discuss possible manifestations of poor mental health through a child's external behavior. And for the teens, we'll do external behavior as well as thought processes and any other behaviors that may not be normal signs of good mental health. And then finally, we'll see how all of these factors affect child and adolescent success within a school setting, as well as the resources that are found within school. So before we go into the next slide, I just want to ask anyone that's present if they can give a definition. I want a young person and a person that's young at heart, if you get what I'm trying to say. So does anyone want to give a definition of mental health if they know? Wonderful. Go ahead. Okay, very well. Give her a round of applause. And Malay kind of cheated because they talked about that on the first day of school. So does anyone who's young at heart want to try and give me a definition? Anyone? You're still young. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Happy Sabbath. Mental health is essentially how us people like express ourselves emotionally. Like, if like for example, someone gets in trouble, it's their brain that processes how they're going to deal with the situation, and yeah.
Okay, very good, very
My
good.
brain can.
Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so just like these two intelligent children have stated, mental health is an integral component of each individual's overall health and well-being, and it includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It influences cognition, thinking, perception, and behavior, and it plays a role in stress management and decision-making. So, for instance, someone with poor mental health may not get along well with others. They may find unhealthy ways of managing stress. such as like drug abuse or maybe self-harm, and they may not be able to cope with life challenges. So as soon as they come upon some adversity, they may self-isolate or, things like that. And it's important to note that a person's mental health can change over time depending on many factors. So when the demands placed on a person exceed their resources and coping abilities, their mental health could be impacted negatively. So if someone is working long hours, they may not be able to keep up a conversation with a loved one or something. If they're caring for a relative, their patience for other people may be limited because they're overwhelmed, or if they're experiencing economic hardship, they may experience poor mental health as well. And it's important to differentiate the difference between mental health and then the presence of mental illness. If you have poor mental health, it does not necessarily mean that you are mentally ill. So you children and teens are allowed to have bad days. It does not mean that you're mentally ill. Parents, your children are allowed to have bad days without you thinking they're depressed or they have anxiety. They may, but they're still allowed to have those bad days. And just like the average adult, there's days when they feel low, but there's always, it's a roller coaster. So when there's a down, there's pretty much always an up. So the concern really should come when they've been low way too long and you don't see that incline showing up. So we can go to the next slide. So foundations of good mental health in childhood and adolescence. So like any good thing, mental health is something that should be nurtured and cared for so it can remain good and continue to flourish. It's not something you one day say, I'm going to start working on my mental health and think for the rest of your lifetime you'll be fine, because it's something that requires upkeep at all points. So unconditional love from family, self-confidence and high self-esteem, the opportunity to play with other children or peers, encouraging teachers and supportive caretakers are important as well, and safe and secure surroundings and appropriate guidance and discipline. This is where we get into what parents can do to promote mental well-being in their children, and these are considered foundations because they not only influence or impact children within childhood, but it shapes who they are as a teen, and then the adult they'll eventually become. Sorry. We can go to the next slide. So a parent's role in their child's mental well-being. First, we'll begin with unconditional love. We want to give children love without condition, as it says. So love, security, and acceptance should be at the heart of your home. It shouldn't be only when your child is bringing home A's or they're staying out of trouble that you love them and tell them that you love them. It should be at all times. You messed up, but I still love you, those kind of things. It's not only when, they're making you proud, quote unquote, you say, oh, I'm proud of you and I love you, and that's the only time they hear it. It's vital that children know your love does not depend on his or her accomplishments, as I said, and mistakes and defeats should be expected and accepted. So even when they're doing the wrong thing, they're going against all the foundations that you've set, whether that's spiritually, religiously, morally, in terms of values. You should expect them to mess up, as bad as it sounds, and you should accept those mistakes. So confidence grows in a home that is full of unconditional love and affection. So we move on to the next point, which is confidence and self-esteem. So we want to praise their perseverance, learning to not give up at the first sign of frustration or bailing on an attempt after one setback is an important life skill. Confidence and self-esteem are not about succeeding at everything all the time. They're about being resilient enough to keep trying and not being distressed if you're not the best at something. So You want to articulate goals with them, large and small, and talk to them about achieving what they want to because it makes them feel strong. You want to help your child turn desires and dreams into actionable goals by encouraging them to make a list of things they'd like to accomplish. So if your child wants to be a dentist, for example, you don't just want to say, okay, go for it. You want to say, okay, so you are in middle school now or in high school now. This is what you should be doing to try and work towards that. So let's say for this semester you get a certain amount of grades. You focus on this subject more than the other ones, those kind of things, instead of it seeming so far-fetched in their mind, because it's a lot to process. You want to model confidence yourself. You can't expect your kids to be confident in themselves or their abilities if you're constantly verbally abusing yourself. So you don't want to be around your kids saying, ugh, I'm not even going to apply for this job because it doesn't make sense. I'm not good enough. I can't do X, Y, Z. And then you hear your kid, Mom, I'm not going to join math club. I'm not going to join drama club because I'm not good. And you're like, where did you get that idea from? It's what children live, what they learn, and they learn through observation and experiences. So even if you're not quite feeling the most confident, first of all, you shouldn't be verbally abusing yourself, period. But maybe not let them hear it. If you're having a low confidence day, when they see you tackle new tasks with optimism and lots of preparation, it sets a good example for them. That doesn't mean you have to pretend to be perfect, because that's also detrimental. If they see that everything you do, you're saying, oh, I'm the best, it's a little, contradicting. You want to be your best for your kids, but at the same time, if you're practicing false perfection, it can also be detrimental because they're not going to be good at everything the first time. So if they see that, well, everything Mom does is she does it the first time and she's good at it and I can't quite get that. So you want to find a balance. Tell them that you can do anything that you set your mind to, but there are times when you may fall short, and that's okay. So it has nothing to do with your ability necessarily, which is why we want to praise perseverance and encourage it. So we want to also encourage them to try new things, because attaining new skills makes kids feel capable and confident that they can tackle whatever comes their way. The next point is to encourage play and support relationships with peers. For me as a child, that wasn't a priority for my parents because I'm an introvert. I'm with them 24/7. Do you want to go out with your friends? Nope. Malay, on the other hand, my smaller sister, she is a social butterfly. So as a parent, use this to Jody, you have three different personalities, maybe 3 different social skills. So you want to ensure that you're not using one standard for all of your children. So if you even have one kid that's an introvert, you should look at your next child and say, they're extroverted, this plays a big part in their mental health. Maybe I should be supportive of their relationship with their peers. So parents should not only encourage children to feel safe and free to be children, but they should also encourage them to, make those connections with other peers. And it's important that parents with younger children, you act as your child's playmate. So they learn how to do things such as share, be kind, those kind of things before they are in a bigger school setting with a lot of kids their age. So it's important that children develop strong relationships with their peers, but their parents first. So take your kid to that birthday party, let their friends spend the afternoon one Sunday, take them to Dave & Buster's, whatever it is, but you want to support them in that social development. You want to provide appropriate guidance and instructive discipline. You want to be firm, be kind, and realistic with your expectations, house rules, those kind of things, because children's development depends on your love and encouragement. Set a good example. You can't expect self-control and self-discipline from a child if you do not practice that same behavior. You also want to criticize the behavior of your child and not your child, because that goes back to their self-esteem, what they equate themselves to, what they think they can and cannot accomplish. So it's best to say, I did not like what you did, rather than you are a trouble child, you are bad, whatever the case may be. You want to stay away from those "you are" statements when you're disciplining. You want to say what you did or that was XYZ, but you never want to point at your child. Their one mistake does not make them. So I'm not going to tell you exactly how to discipline your kids, but just bear those things in mind. So our next and last point on this slide is that you want to always ensure that your children feel safe. You want to create a constant safe space for your children so they always feel free and comfortable enough to tell you any troubles, fears, or anxieties that they may be experiencing. This may not be something that all parents may be open to, this point that I'm going to make, but it's important that you create a space where your children can tell you about the things that you have done that they do not appreciate. So nothing, children and teens, nothing disrespectful, of course, but something along the lines of, Mom or Dad, yesterday you yelled at me for something I didn't do because you did not hear me out and I had something to say, and that made me feel sad and unheard. Some parents may respond to that as, you're talking back to me? Don't, like, we already finished that discussion, whatever it is, but it's important because this helps them to build emotional literacy when they are interacting with peers or eventually have romantic relationships. You often have men and women, but I'm gonna pick on the men a little bit statistically. They are very emotionally illiterate. They feel what they feel, but they cannot say what they feel because they're constantly, either they're not given the space to express themselves, or when they feel the opportunity has arisen, they're shut down. So you want to promote that space that they can, voice what they say. Again, nothing disrespectful, children and teens, but, it could be complex for some ages, but nonetheless, you want to, even if it's to ask after, they've been disciplined or something, how do you feel? You may not want to hear it right away, but it's important to ask. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, we're going to go into positive practices for good mental health. So for our adolescents specifically, it's the time where individuals are most likely to develop a mental disorder of some kind. And this tends to remain unaddressed and untreated for all or nearly majority of their adulthood. And this is why it's so important to practice healthy habits, even if the foundation was not set during childhood. So if you're a teen in here and you're saying that your parents didn't do XYZ, you're still responsible for yourself. So you want to still practice healthy thought processes. You want to make sure that you're keeping track of, the feelings that you feel, again, back to emotional literacy. And you want to stress the importance of, your own viewpoint. You never want to shut your own thoughts down. You want to make sure that you're expressing those. So for self-esteem, we really want to stress the importance of self-esteem and the influence of self-esteem. So the 3 levels that I've put is, I'm sorry, did I miss a slide? I don't have that slide up here. So you want to build self-esteem, or you want to repair or maintain self-esteem. These three levels are purposely stated because there are many teens in these categories. Either they have zero self-esteem, or they seemingly had solid self-esteem, but traumas or hurt significantly decreased or damaged that self-esteem. And then there are those who are fortunate enough to have great self-esteem and allowed nothing to shake it. So one of the biggest causes of low self-esteem for teens is social media. Cue the eye roll. Social media is not great. I'm on social media. There are times when I have to take a break. It's so toxic. There are comparisons. You know, people are subliminally saying, if you're not like me, you're not it, basically. If you don't have what I have, if you don't look like me, if you don't speak the way I do, that kind of thing. And it causes our teens to compare themselves. They're constantly looking in the mirror and saying, that Instagram model, she's the it girl and I'm not, but that's not true. There are also invalidations on social media where people may not necessarily be saying, if you're not like me, but they're saying, if you're like this, you're not it, which is also not true. So you want to develop positive affirmations for yourself, repeating positive mantras like, I am beautiful, or I am loved, I am enough, I'm worthy, those kind of things. They help combat the negative thoughts that cause poor self-image. And you also want to surround yourself with people who will pour into you, whether that's your parents, someone at church, a friend, a peer, a teacher, a school counselor, whatever that may be. You want them to be supportive in all your endeavors, applaud your wins, encourage you through your losses, and never let you question your abilities or self-worth. Okay, we can go to the next slide. You also want to develop a strong emotional vocabulary. Once again, we're talking about emotional literacy. And I know this says teaching children, but it's such an important life skill for everyone. And this has so many important feelings and emotions that lots of people would consider to be indescribable, which is not great. You want to be able to find the words, even if it's not this word, you should know the definition. You should know what these feelings are so you could try to describe it. Things like afraid, that's common. Alienated is different from being lonely. You know, you want to, even if you don't know what's causing these feelings, you should be able to identify them. So annoyed, anxious, apathetic, apprehensive, those kind of things. You want that to help you describe the things that you're feeling. And without these, often it leads to outbursts and childlike behavior. Anyone who works with kids, they have a very limited, well, some of them have a very limited vocabulary. So if they're feeling some way or something happened and they cannot tell you what happened, what do? They act out, they throw things, they're screaming, they're crying, and there are adults that act like this. You don't want your children to turn into those adults that act like that. So you want to encourage them, talk to them, saying, you know, describe to me how you're feeling. Maybe you have to give them that word and tell them the next time you're feeling like this is what that is, that kind of thing. And it goes back to relationships again, whether it's romantic, platonic, familial. You can push people away if you are not emotionally literate. It protects your sanity, it prevents blow-ups, which lead to other kind of things. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, these are signs of poor mental health in children. Children that are on a mental health decline have frequent tantrums or are intensely irritable a lot of the time. So it could be wake up and get ready for school. They're either not talking to you or they're yelling at you, one extreme to the next. Or you say, oh, you dropped something, they're rolling their eyes, huffing and puffing. Sometimes it goes beyond having a bad attitude. They could be on a mental health decline. These children also sometimes talk about fears or worries. If you are in a seemingly safe, let's say, environment, and your kids are talking about outrageous scenarios that could happen to their detriment or to your detriment, they could be on a mental health decline. That's saying you could be at Walmart and your child is maybe so close to you and you're saying, what's wrong? They're scared that maybe one of the shelves could fall on them or someone could just snatch them. That's not unreasonable though, because people, they do that. But if it's just out of the blue fears and worries, that's something to be concerned about. Children also complain about frequent stomach aches or headaches with no known medical cause. If they keep having stomach aches, they keep saying that their head hurts, but they go to the doctor says, you're fine, I've run tests, you're fine, you know, you're not dehydrated, you're not malnourished, but you keep having these things. It's a psychological way for your emotions and your mental state to manifest physically, because either you're suppressing them or, you know, you're just not aware that they're there. Children are also in constant motion and cannot sit quietly except when watching videos or playing video games. This is not just an ADHD diagnosis, it's also about poor mental health. If they're not, you know, if you can't have them sitting in one place focusing on something unless they're in front of a screen, poor mental health. They either sleep too much or too little and have frequent nightmares or seem sleepy during the day. Sometimes their thoughts are just so much, their body can't handle it. So either they're so exhausted that they sleep way too much, or their thoughts are running so rampant that it keeps them up. And when they do sleep, they have nightmares. You know, those things are very concerning. Children are also not interested in playing with other children or have difficulty making friends. This is a sign of autism as well, but for mental health, it's also very concerning because it's a basic life skill, and when things begin to impair, you know, the things that you're supposed to be able to do on a day-to-day basis, you know, it's a concern for your overall mental well-being. These children also struggle academically or have experienced a recent decline in grades. If you have a straight A or AB student and all of a sudden they're bringing home C's and they have at least one other of these things that we've listed, they're on a mental health decline and they need some kind of intervention. And these are more so for children about 10 and under because the way they vocalize things is not the same as teens or adults, so you kind of have to look more into the signs for them because they won't just come to you and say, I'm having a bad mental health day. And lastly, they also repeat actions or check things many times out of fear that something bad may happen. It is not normal for your child to say, can you open the closet door 30 times before they go to sleep because there's a monster in there? They're having a bad mental health day or a week or whatever that may be. They're on a mental health decline. If they're in the car and they're checking 40 times to make sure everyone has on their seatbelt, they're not overly cautious, they are having, you know, poor mental health, those kind of things. We can move to the next slide. Signs of poor mental health in adolescents. So they often have lost interest in things that they used to enjoy. I'm picking on my sister again. She's a dancer. If one day she comes home and quits and says, I'm not dancing anymore, no explanation, red flag. If she comes home and says, I've been thinking about it a lot and I don't think I want to dance anymore, that's completely different. Or if they're in band or they act and they just one day say, I quit, no explanation, red flag. And for adolescents, that's something that you have to be mindful of. You can't expect your parents to think for you. You have to be aware of those things. If they have low energy all the time, another red flag. Nobody is that tired as much as you may think. If you have low energy, can't do your work, you can't sit up around the table, whatever it is, red flag. If they sleep too much or sleep too little again or seem sleepy throughout the day, that means you can't keep your eyes open during class, during church, whatever it is, you have poor mental health. If they spend more and more time alone and avoid social activities with friends or families. Most teens these days like to be in their room, so a lot of that doesn't seem alarming. But if you usually say you go out on outings on a Sunday and one day they're like, I'm not going, no explanation, then that's part of this, self-isolation. If they usually are always talking about their friends, me and my friend did this, me and my friend did that, if they stop, red flag again. Or if, they're always begging you to go somewhere or do something and they're not, then, that's an issue. If they diet or exercise excessively for fear of gaining weight, that's a big thing. That can even go as far as mental illness. So that one is a big one. If they engage in self-harm behaviors, such as cutting or burning their skin, that's also way past poor mental health. That's going into mental illness. And sometimes you may not see it, but if they're constantly, wearing long sleeves or they're going to the pool and they don't want to take their shirt off, you may think it's a self-confidence thing, but sometimes it can run deeper than that. And if they engage in risky or destructive behavior alone or with friends, so this can range from speeding in their cars, going 100 miles an hour just because they feel like it, to drug use, anything like that. Those are signs. Those could lead to suicidal thoughts. If they're thinking that life is just something that they can play with, that's a big sign that something else might be going on. Again, having thoughts of suicide. They may not tell parents, but teens, if you have that, you must have someone that you can reach out to. They even have suicide hotline, call that number. Whatever it is, if they have periods of highly elevated energy and activity and require much less sleep than usual, that's poor mental health. That's also associated with suicide. If you know someone that is suicidal and they've been low energy, sleeping all the time, to now they're having sudden bursts of energy, they need 2 hours of sleep, it's because they decided that they want to go through with it and they're feeling like they have a breakthrough. So teens, you want to watch those thought processes. Parents, you want to look into that. Even adults with your friends, you want to make sure that, you're keeping tabs on those kinds of behaviors. And we can go to the next slide. So mental health in the school environment. So mental health problems can affect a student's energy level, concentration, dependability, mental ability, and optimism, which hinders school performance. So again, we talked about, grade decline. Sometimes it's even to the point where they're acting out at school, or sometimes the teacher might not even notice that they're there because they're so quiet. There's a range. It's whatever is out of the norm for your child or teen. That's the things that you should be concerned about. School is one of the biggest stressors for children and adolescents. And that could be academically, socially, if they're being bullied, that kind of thing. So it's important to detect any negative factors regarding your child and their interactions with the school setting. Sometimes if you notice that your child is going like this throughout the week, and come the weekend they're up here, school is their problem. And it's not just about being lazy sometimes. Sometimes it's so stressful that they cannot manage being in that setting without extra help, extra support. So parents, you want to utilize teachers and school counselors as a resource, because throughout the week, they see your child more than you see them. So again, they see what you do not. Whatever is in the classroom, whatever actions they're taking in the classroom or what they're not doing in the class, their teachers know. So if you're second guessing yourself about signs that you may see, it's always best to, contact your teacher, because they're an ally. They're not just there to teach. Sometimes, they can be that missing link to what's going on with your kid, and they can provide outside resources in case you need like action plans for how they can cope with certain things, or if they need professional referrals for therapy or any other, treatments. And that goes beyond mental health. That's even like ADHD or autism or those kind of things. If they're having behavioral issues that are not mental health oriented, then they can provide resources for that as well. And one thing that I didn't mention is spirituality or religion, because, sometimes it's best to tackle mental health issues from a scientific standpoint, because there's more, hard facts that you can follow. But prayer and stuff is not something that you should write off, okay? If you're in a depressive mode, it's not going to be helpful for you to tell someone to pray, obviously, because even I think it's 1 Kings 19 when Elijah was depressed and God was like, eat something, drink something, go to sleep, wake up, find something else to do. You can't just stay in that. But there's other things that you can pray for. I know sometimes for me personally, when it comes to anxiety, when anxiety is killing me, saying a prayer, being down in prayer, listening to a song, it helps. So I don't want you to think that being in church or asking someone of the faith to help you out is not effective, because it is more than effective. So that's the last point I wanted to leave you with. So if anyone has any questions or not, my job here is done. Of course, you have a question. Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you very much.
Emphasize suicide. Mm-hmm. So what's the suicide hotline number? Can we get it, please?
Yes, I can give it to you afterwards.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? No comment?
So I'm going to second that. This was a great presentation. Very, very good.
Thank you.
Just an example, what you say to your children is so important. I remember at church, I was about 15, 16. We were having youth day, and they asked me to preach. I've never preached before, but they asked me to preach. And, I put my little 1 and 2 together. And I will never forget this, when my dad said to me, "Don't you ever think about preaching anymore." No, my father, who is a preacher. And yes, it was all jumbled, but people were happy to hear that. And it really took a toll on me. Really, really did. He said to me, "Never do that again. Don't preach again, even if they ask you." And it wasn't anything I just thought I did so well. I wasn't, he was the only one that said that to me. So it did leave an impact on me. So if you ask me to preach, no. No, that's how I feel, and it's even up to this day, I still remember that comment that was made to me by my father, not by another not by another family member, it's by my Father. So I really, really, really enjoyed this session.
Thank you. And just to comment on that, when something like that happens, it doesn't matter how many people outside of you, the parents, give them positive feedback. Once you instill something negative in them, it's long lasting. Sometimes it's permanent, and it can go beyond preaching. It can go into public speaking or those kind of things. So you want to be very careful. So,
Yes.
yes.
Awesome job.
Thanks.
Very, very lovely. I wanted to echo something you said earlier about having safe and secure surroundings. And I just wanted to emphasize to everyone here, if you don't currently have young children in school, younger ones in particular, like when we went to school, times were different. When we were in high school, elementary school, times are different. And we deal with things like code reds and lockdowns and school shootings. And it's not just the high school level. You have kindergartners, preschoolers. We have 3 and 4-year-olds at my school who practice what to do when a shooter comes in the building. Little children should not be exposed to that stuff, but they are. And what that's doing is raising a bunch of children with anxiety
Yes.
and depression and all this extra heaviness. And you mentioned they have some of those who have the extreme fear and worry all the time. Any day that we have a code red drill, the rest of my day is shot. I can't get my lesson because I'm getting, Miss Reece, what if? What if? And we've had experiences before where we weren't quite sure that it was a code red drill, you know, because it was just so sudden. And my kids know what to do, but because they weren't sure and I wasn't sure, they could tell that I wasn't sure. Some starts crying, they're shaking, huddled in the corner. Times are very different. And so that was one reason why I want us to adopt schools and pray for schools, or pray for our students first and foremost, all of our children, but also pray for the local schools and pray for God's protection, because it's not just shootings in high schools anymore. Crazy people are breaking into elementary schools, you know what I mean? So that affects not just the mental health of the children, but also of the staff who are
faculty,
there exposed to that as well. And of course, parents who are worried about their children as well.
Just want to say that I appreciate this presentation so much. I've learned a lot. Also, you know, my kids was pointing out my blind spots as usual, and I was pointing out theirs. I always say that my son was an introvert and my daughter is an extrovert. So now that my son is opening up a bit, I just learned that I was asking him what, he said he's both. And I said, what is that called? And I just learned that there's ambivert.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to say.
There was someone before you. Yes.
I would just like to say how I also very much appreciated this presentation, because I feel like a lot of parents in here grew up with a specific type of parenting that their parents believed would help their kids, or what they believed they should teach their kids. And I feel like it's very important for the parents now to understand the effect that certain things can have on their kids. And I am very glad that you came here to teach and improve some parents that may have certain skills, So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you make mention of teens and, children, adolescents. What if an adult start experiencing certain of those points that you made? They have not had anything traumatic from a child growing up, but had some experiences as an adult and start experiencing some of those. Would you say that it could start as an adult or it starts from a child? Do you understand what I'm saying?
It can start at any point. Usually, what affects your mental health as an adult, besides your experiences, are the things that were instilled in you as a child, such as how you cope with certain things, who you allow into your spaces, the boundaries that you make, those kind of things. So the things that I've said, especially for the adolescents, can manifest in adults, but at a different level, if that makes sense. So if we just, let me look back at this part, where it says, you spend more time alone. It may not manifest the same because your child lives within a family, but if you live by yourself, you may not even think about it because you're like, oh, I'm always alone. But if someone rings your phone and you don't answer, or if you have the opportunity to go out and you don't go, if someone is knocking at your door, you act like you're not home, those are things that are indications of poor mental health, and those can even lead to depressive episodes, those kind of things. So, yes, I hope I answered that question. Okay, thank you, great.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Sade, that was excellent, by the
Thank
way,
you.
so thank you. But I wanted to ask two things. One, I didn't catch the word that was expressed to describe extrovert and
Ambivert.
ambivert.
It's
And
A-M-B-I is the
ambivert.
prefix,
Okay.
yes.
So I need, if you can elaborate more on that, what does that look like?
Got you.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Mm.
So ambivert is a cross between an extrovert and an introvert. Obviously, you have qualities of both. So there are days when you are introverted, you don't not necessarily that you want to self-isolate, but you're more to yourself. You want to reserve your social battery, those kind of things. And then there are days when you're extroverted. And sometimes it even manifests in you are naturally an introvert, but when you get around a group of people that are your people, you're extroverted. You're the loudest one in the room. You laugh the loudest. You're the one cracking jokes. You start the conversation, those kind of things. So, yeah, that's what ambivert.
Thank you. You've
yeah.
described me. Thank you so much. So thanks for that. The second thing I wanted to mention, and I think you kind of nicely hinted on it a bit, is the cultural differences. I know that for me, having two children, boy and a girl, one is, I'm going to say, I can't say the word yet. I'm going to practice it, I promise you.
Is it adolescent?
Ambivert. I have an
ambivert,
young lady,
yeah.
and I have a very extroverted son. And so one of the things culturally, as I'm raising my children, being that coming from Jamaica and also having the American type education, hearing from when they do something wrong or mess up, hitting is not always my first thing. Conversation, trying to understand why this took place, what can we do so it doesn't happen again, is always my first point, first technique. But when you have surrounded by family that is of a different mindset based on cultural traditions, you know, beat the boy, lick him down, you know, those kind of things. How, and we've all probably have heard it because that is what was taught to them, and that's what continued. And I know for myself and my cousins, we wanted to break that because we teach our children how to communicate, how to talk to us. And there are moments where it's like, listen, if I have to raise a hand, you know why.
Yes,
and we're having a conversation why. How do you recommend dealing with the outside interference of those cultural, because for me, as a mom and an overprotective mom, I hurt feelings real quickly when it comes to my children. So, and a lot of people in the family know that about me. I will hurt your feelings. But what would you say to those people who have children who do have those cultural battles and interference in raising the children in the way that we want them to be mentally secure?
Boundaries. Boundaries are a big thing, and a lot of people don't want to set them for fear of hurting other people's feelings. Of course, you don't have that issue, which is great. So what you want to say is, I do not choose for hitting to be the first resort when disciplining my child or children, and I would prefer that you accept that. And it could be as simple as that. You are not obligated to explain your parental style or the discipline that you have within your home. It's not their business, and it doesn't necessarily concern them. So if they don't honor that boundary, then they can exclude themselves from the picture. It sounds harsh, but it's for the mental well-being of your children within your home. So if you were to have younger kids and say they were spending the afternoon with another family member, and you specifically said to this family member, I do not hit my kids, you come back and they hit your kid because of one thing they did, and maybe you did explain and say, talk to them first, and their first resort was still hitting, then you know that family member does no longer have the right or anything to be around your kid alone. So you don't necessarily have to explain yourself. If you want to, great. If you don't, you are not obligated to. Set that boundary and let it play out. And if they don't honor it, then I'm not saying build a wall or exclude your family, because don't do that, but if it comes to that, then it comes to that. So yeah.
We have to respect the emotional vulnerabilities of our children, and all kids are different and are going to respond differently. See what I mean? I have some siblings who, my parents could say anything to them and they'd be okay. They'd just deal with it and say, oh gosh, you heard this, what my mom just said or whatever. And then there's me. You just raise your voice a little bit and I bawl. You know what I mean? Some of us are like that.
Yes.
And we have to respect that, not only about our children, but each other as well. And that's part of what I do. I respect how every person is. The way some things I can say to Brandon, I won't ever say to Tiffany, because it'll be the end of the story. She'll just melt, But we know our children, and we have to respect how they are emotionally and respond in kind. And we can't just always say, well, they're just going to have to deal with it. That's just how I am.
And I think, honestly, that's something that a lot of us do with each other. Even in the workplace, you may learn someone else's temperament and say, oh, I can't say X, Y, Z to this person because it'll set them off. But we don't do that with our kids. You just tell them that they have to suck it up and deal with it, but they have their own temperament. They are little people. They're not just mindless beings in your home. They have their own thinking, their own perspectives, that kind of thing. So you have to bear that in mind. You can't just do what you please and think they'll be okay, because that's not always the case. So does anyone have any other questions? Yes.
I'm coming from a cultural background, but when it comes to other people's children, or even my grandchildren, I wouldn't lift a finger on them. And I would more likely saying, okay, I more will talk, but not to be negative on them. Because I remember Savannah, when she was growing up, when she was younger, she was very bold and And she would set, like, for instance, the other day I was talking about it, she would, if a child, they were in the babysitting area, and children that were older than her, she would put them in the corner on timeout. So her grandmother, other grandmother would say, that Pitney had given me so much trouble, she's so bad. And I would say, not my good Savannah, my good girl. And sometimes she said, good girl, my foot. But I would put it in the opposite way. So she thinks she's so good, and sometimes she's really out there.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody should really intervene or interfere with a parent way of disciplining their children.
Well, first of all, I must say your presentation was really wonderful.
Thank you.
And you're 99.9% correct on most of what you said. Right? And I'm not saying everything is perfect, but the fact that people, the way you hit a point where the way you talk to your children, what you put in them, say, oh, you're no good, or you're a bad kid. That is something that lives with them for a long, long time. It's just like my mom, she always tell me, when we say she gave us something to do, and I say, Mommy, I can't. Mommy say, you don't say you can't, Chala. Say you'll try.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is very important. Like, people would tell you, oh, you can't do this. And my son, even one of my sons, I got 3 boys, and the youngest one, he is the one they always call him Trasher Boy. You know, he likes to dress and stuff, but he falls short in his stuff sometimes and get trouble in school. And one of the time I went there and I talked to the teachers and I talked to them, and they come around and he does all that he got to do. And I said, son, you can do anything you want to do. You remember, use my good son. And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, I'm going to do better. You know, and on top of that, when people put you down, you remember that you got to have that self-esteem within you. Because what they inject in you, you're going to do it. And I could remember, like me, when they tell me I can't do some stuff. Like, I work on some jobs with some white man, and they gave me their supervisor position, and they said, why you give this guy this job? And they try to put me down, but I tell them, the job that is so difficult, I'm going for it. So the self-esteem, you got to have it within you, and you got to inject it in the children. And this was so wonderful and awesome what you did for this presentation, and it's really a blessing.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, because I know you weren't you're tired of standing so long.
It's okay.
But I was over there making a cup of coffee, and you said something, and I had to turn around, because I raised 2 girls, and when you're saying that, I froze for a minute, and I started to look back. I'm wondering, have I ever said it this way to my girls? Like you were mentioning the fact that when they've done something wrong, instead of, saying they're bad,
Talk about what they
just
did.
said, okay, you just say, okay, you made a bad choice, or your choices, I don't like your choices or not. So I'm thinking, I'm wondering, have I ever said it the other way around to my kids while they're growing up, when they made some choices that I didn't agree with or like so much, even when they were in school growing up. But that's, I said, that was a great point, and just keep telling them that you love them, it, meant a whole lot, more than we could ever imagine. Just hearing from the parent that you love them, and don't wait for somebody else to tell them that they love them. And just love them for who they are. And when they make bad choices, you just said, that choice was not the right one, but I still love you. But that, I had to turn around when I heard that. I said, whoa, wonder if I had done it the other way around. But oh man, you have me stuck. I wanted to go outside and make a phone call, and I didn't want to miss nothing. So it was so wonderfully done. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Pastor Ken.
Yes, I just want to say this real quick. So I have a little 11 years old here, and he's like a grown man trapped in a kid's body. And that's what I have to deal with every single day. And sometimes he will say stuff, and I'm like, Jesus. If I ever thought of that when I was his age, I told him, I said, all my teeth would be flying around the room when my mom. I'm like, no. But, people say, oh, them not have no manners. Because of how we were brought up, we couldn't ask certain things. They have a voice. We couldn't say a word. Right. We had to just zip it and listen to what our parents have to say. But these children, they're telling you, Mom, you did that, and you should not have done that. And sometimes he's using backup from the scriptures too. What do you do? Now, you have to be the example for your children. And don't tell them, you don't have no manners. Say, you'll need to work on your mannerism. Say that. Instead of, if you tell my child, you don't have no manners, talk to me about it, please. If he said something and doesn't fit to what you're supposed to be saying to you as an adult, have the conversation with me. Don't tell my child you're this and you're that, and you're gonna scold him behind my back. Never do that. I tell the teachers at school, if there's something going on that needs my attention, I'm always available. Call me anytime. But never you hand down any punishment until you have discussed the matter with me. And, that's all I have to say.
And I'm going to say this last comment. So with that, whenever your child is different from other kids, they're more mature, they're more well-learned, more versed in scripture than others, you never want to suppress that talent or that gift. You just want to redirect it. So you say, I get your point. The point you're making is good. The way you speak is good, but not in this setting. And you give an example of when that would be more appropriate, but you never want to shut it down completely. So thank you for your kind words about my presentation, and God bless. Thank you so much.
Very lovely. Amen. That was beautiful. So proud. So proud. Oh, I love it. This is my kind of stuff. We're going to move right ahead while we're learning. I'm going to bring on our guest presenter today is Dr. Sabrina Clark. Dr. Clark is a board-certified pediatrician who specializes in primary care. She has a special interest in childhood obesity, caring for patients with special needs, adolescent medicine, childhood asthma management. Throughout her own childhood, Dr. Clark saw her own loved ones deal with illnesses and relied on doctors for compassionate care. After this life-changing experience, she decided to pursue medicine to help other people just like her family members. Today, Dr. Clark enjoys building relationships with families and watching her pediatric patients grow up. She supports parents through their children's medical ups and downs, helping them to thrive and grow into young adults. During her free time, Dr. Clark enjoys spending time with family and friends, traveling, shopping, woohoo, and running her own luxury stationery company, Create with Bree. Dr. Clark lives in Kennesaw, Georgia, with her husband, Jamie, and 2 bonus children, Jayla and Malik. Put your hands together and welcome Dr. Clark.
myself together here. I also am an ambivert, so I get a little nervous with public speaking, so bear with me today. But we're going to be talking about 8 tips to keep children healthy during the school year today. And so kids are back to school. We're already seeing increased illnesses, strep, flu, COVID. So we're going to talk about ways to keep your kids healthy while they're in school this year. So next slide, please. Okay, so the first tip we're going to talk about is staying up to date on vaccinations. So before we get more into this slide, I want to just say that vaccinating your children is your personal choice. But I want to encourage everyone to consider vaccinating your children and keeping them up to date with their vaccines, because that's the most important way that you can protect them from preventable illnesses. So vaccines prevent 14+ infections that can lead to severe illness. So things like polio, measles, mumps, rubella, chicken pox, pertussis, those are all illnesses we don't really see much today because of vaccinations. And so there's so many different infections that are prevented because of vaccinating. Also being sure to consider the flu and COVID vaccines. We're already starting to see flu. I saw my first case this week in the office. And so it is out there and it's gonna be spreading around. So definitely wanna consider getting the flu and the COVID vaccines. And particularly during respiratory season. So that's gonna be your fall to winter months. So I encourage patients to get the flu vaccine before Halloween, because after that, it's gonna really increase in terms of the cases. Next, vaccines help to protect those who are immune compromised. So there are some people who have illnesses and chronic disease where they cannot get certain vaccines, and the way that we can protect them is by getting those vaccines. We call it herd immunity. So by everyone who is healthy and who do not have a compromised immune system getting vaccinated against these illnesses, we're more likely to help prevent those who cannot get vaccines from getting sick from those illnesses as well. So vaccinating is very important and something to consider, and it's the first thing that you can do to help to keep your kids safe during the school year. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, I have a trivia question on this page. So I have some trivia questions throughout the presentation just to get everybody involved. So the first trivia question is, true or false, you need a flu vaccine every winter? So who wants to answer? I saw that hand back there first. Nope, it is true. So you need a flu. I heard a true though. Somebody said it over here. Well, so every flu season, so let me rephrase that. Should you get a flu vaccine every flu season? That is true. So yes, we'll give you the first. I have some gift cards for the question, so I have one for you here. So yes, you should get a flu vaccine every flu season. And so the flu season usually starts in the fall, winter months. And every year a new flu vaccine is developed. And the way that the pharmaceutical companies develop the flu vaccine is they look at what strains are likely to be prevalent during that year, and they will put protection into the flu vaccine for those strains. So that's why we have to get one every single year. And the flu vaccine, or the flu and COVID, as we've been seeing, those are viruses that change very frequently. And so that's why there's a lot of boosters and you have to get one every year because it changes very frequently. So next slide. Okay. So next we're gonna talk about eating a healthy and well-balanced diet. So this is very, very important. Don't skip breakfast. I always talk to my patients and say, hey, do you eat breakfast in the morning? And most of them say no, especially the teenagers. They're kind of roll out of bed, get dressed, and then they're out the door. But breakfast is very important. Even if you grab a breakfast bar or a smoothie, you should eat something in the morning for breakfast because that's gonna give you a boost of energy. And as you can see, it's gonna increase your ability to focus and concentrate throughout the school day. So eat breakfast every day and keep those breakfast bars if you're not a big eater in the morning. Also, limiting sugar intake. So the kids are gonna get on me today because I'm gonna talk about a lot of things that we need to work on. So limiting sugar intake. Sugar is gonna decrease your immune system in terms of its ability to fight off infection, and it's also going to increase inflammation in your body. Inflammation in your body can affect your organs, it can affect your ability to focus, it can make you groggy, and so decreasing and limiting sugar in your diet is really important. Also increasing fruit and vegetable intake. So I have a lot of picky eater patients, and most of the time they don't eat vegetables. They like fruit, but the vegetables are always the tricky part. One of the tricks that I will tell parents is to make smoothies. Smoothies are a great way to sneak those vegetables in there if they don't like to eat them, because the fruit makes it taste a little sweet, and those are natural sugars in the fruit, so that's good. And then that's a way to get vegetables in their diet if they're not big vegetable eaters. And so vegetables are rich in minerals, vitamins, and antioxidants, and these are all gonna help to boost the immune system. Okay. And then a few other tips on this slide. Taking a daily multivitamin, especially if you're a picky eater. So picky eaters tend to have a diet where they kind of stick to a certain group of foods, and so they'll limit themselves in other food groups that they're not wanting to eat, and so taking a daily multivitamin is going to help them to get those vitamins and minerals that they need that they're not getting in their diet. And then lastly, staying hydrated. So drinking water and milk. Juice is not something that children need, but we live in a world today where everyone gets juice or drinks juice here and there. But kids do not need juice, but if they're drinking juice, I would try to limit how much juice they are drinking and stick to water and milk. And I just listed here how many cups of water or milk that children should have. So for 1 to 3 year olds, they should have about 3 to 4 cups of milk or water a day. For 4 to 7, about 5 cups of milk or water a day. And in 8 and up, about 8 cups of water or milk a day. And then limiting sugary drinks as much as you can. Next slide. Okay. So next we're going to talk about teaching and practicing healthy hygiene habits. So this is really, really important. In schools, kids are around a bunch of people all the time, and so these are some tips to help to keep them healthy. So the first thing is going to be switching out toothbrushes every 3 months. So I would set reminders on your phone to switch out your kids' toothbrushes every 3 months, because toothbrushes will build up bacteria and germs over time. And so you want to get a new toothbrush every 3 months. And you might want to do that even more frequently when your kid is sick. So in my house, whenever one of my stepkids are sick, as soon as they're starting to feel better, we're switching out that toothbrush, especially when you get a strep throat infection. So I usually will tell patients to switch out their toothbrush 3 to 4 days within taking their antibiotics for a strep infection. Next is change out school clothes on arrival at school, on arrival at home. And so that's the first thing for my stepkids. When they come home, change out of your clothes, go take a shower, leave your shoes at the door. And so that's a great way to get those germs off of their skin when they get in the house, so they're not passing it around. Educate on cough and sneeze etiquette. So when coughing or sneezing, I always tell patients to cough or sneeze into the bend of their elbow so that they're not coughing into their hands, because as soon as you cough into your hands, you go start to touch things, and that's how you spread germs. So coughing into the elbow of the arm is the best way to cough and sneeze. Avoid touching the face and picking the nose. So our teachers in here might see, especially with the little kids, they like to pick their noses. And so that's one of the things that will definitely spread germs. So encourage your children not to touch their face as much as they can, as well as not picking their nose, and keep their hands away from their eyes, nose, and their mouth. And that's gonna help protect them from getting germs. And then washing hands often. So this is one of my trivia questions. How long should you wash your hands? How many? Who? Let's see. Who went first? I saw. Oh. Let's go. Okay. How long should you wash your hands?
You should wash your hands for at least 20 seconds.
That is correct. So we'll get you a gift card here. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So you want to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds every time you wash your hands. So you want to wet your hands first. You want to get some soap. You want to lather and scrub your hands and scrub in between your nails as well. You want to scrub the palms of your hands and then the top surface of your hands. And you want to scrub for at least 20 seconds, rinse your hands, and then dry. And one trick that we commonly say is to hum or sing the happy birthday song while you're washing your hands, and that way you know you washed your hands for long enough. Okay, and then also with hand sanitizer, the proper way to use that is to put some on your hand, and then you want to cover both your palms and the top surface of your hands, and then you want to let it dry. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, no. I have another trivia question. Okay, how much alcohol should hand sanitizer have? I saw that. What was that? 2%? No, that's not right. No. No. What was that? No. It should have alcohol, but there's a certain percentage that the minimum. What was that? That was, well, you guys are like 5% off. It's 60%, so I'll give it to the 65.
Thank you.
So it should have at least 60% of alcohol for it to be effective, okay? So that's the minimum amount of alcohol that your hand sanitizer should have. So when you buy hand sanitizer, make sure you look at the label to see how much alcohol is in there. There are some hand sanitizers that have less than 60%, so they're not going to be as effective. Purell is probably one of the top brands for hand sanitizer, so I usually will stick with that brand. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so number 4 is getting plenty of sleep and limiting screen time, okay? So sleep is the foundation for growth, learning, and play. Lack of sleep is going to increase cravings. It's also going to increase cravings for junk food. It's going to also increase mood swings, temper tantrums, and increase risk for infection. So sleep is incredibly important. The benefits of adequate sleep are going to be healthier immune system, better school and memory performance, as well as improving mental health. So we had a wonderful presentation about mental health, and so sleep plays a pivotal role in making sure that children have good mental health and well-being. Okay, and then sticking to a consistent bedtime routine. So kids really thrive on routines and anticipating things. So if they kind of know what the next steps are going to be, then they usually do really well with that. So having a strict bedtime during the week, as well as kind of whatever they need to sleep better. Some kids need to take their shower at nighttime. Some kids need to cut their screen time off a few hours before bed. Some kids need to read before bed, so kind of get to know your child and see what things help them to sleep better, okay? And so looking at how many hours of sleep children need, toddlers need about 12 to 14 hours, kindergartners to 6th grade about 9 to 11 hours, and then our 7th graders and up need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. So when your parents tell you to go to sleep, go to sleep. So we have a trivia question here. How much screen time is recommended? I saw your hand first. Yeah. Yes, that is correct. So 2 hours or less of educational screen time is what's recommended. And we live in a world today where technology is everything. And so it is really hard to kind of stick to that 2 hours or less. But it's really important to try to put some boundaries and limitations on screen time with your children, because that's going to increase increase issues with function, as well as increase issues with performance in school. So you want to make sure that we're limiting screen time as much as you can. That includes video games, TV, cell phones. So just setting those boundaries and setting time limits for those things is going to be important. Next slide. Okay, so number 5 is daily physical activity and sunlight. So we have another trivia question. How much physical activity should school-age children have daily? What was that? Okay, a little more. An hour. So it's recommended to have 1 hour of physical activity time a day, which sounds like a long time, but I would really encourage children to be outside and playing. That can be playing, a sport. They can be riding a bike. They can be taking walks. So definitely want to encourage your children to spend more time outside and doing physical activity. It's going to help to get fresh air and sunlight, vitamin D. So most people in the States are actually vitamin D deficient. One of the big reasons is because we don't spend enough time outside. And so getting sunlight is going to help with vitamin D. Also, the benefits of physical activity, better sleep, improving the immune system. So there's some themes here, improving your immune system. All of these things that we're talking about today are going to help to improve your immune system, which is going to help prevent you from getting sick. Improving behavior and stress management. So we talked a lot about self-care, and we had that presentation on mental health. So again, getting physical activity, getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, all of those things are going to help with your mental health as well. Improving performance in school, and then it's important also for our brain and growth development. So physical activity is really important, so make sure you get outside and move your body. Next slide. Okay. So next is dealing with stress and anxiety. So we had our presentation on mental health, so I'll briefly just touch on these because that's also important. Monitoring social media use, so we talked about that. Social media, it's one of those things that children, are exposed to whether we like it or not. And so setting those limits with your children. For example, in my house, my stepdaughter, she is going to be 16 in November, and she is not allowed to have social media. So she doesn't have any social media accounts. And so just considering, putting those boundaries there for your children so that you can kind of control some of the things that they're exposed to. Keeping communication lines open so you can identify bullying or other sources of stress or anxiety in school. So you want to keep an open door communication with your children. We talked a lot about that with the previous presentation. But your children should be able to come to you and talk to you about anything. And if they feel like they can't, then there is room for improvement there. So definitely keeping those lines of communication open so your kids are more likely to tell you when something's going wrong. Letting your child know it's okay to talk about how they're feeling and making it safe for them to discuss tough issues with you. So again, making sure that you have an open door policy there. Prioritizing family meals, self-care breaks, and taking walks together. So that physical activity can be a family walk, doing things together with your children, having family meals, sitting down as a family and having dinner is also very important. So everybody can kind of check in how their day was going, what's going on. So those are going to be important things as well to help minimize stress and anxiety. And then considering counseling if your child is struggling with mental health concerns. So a lot of times counseling can be considered a bit of a taboo. I think that's changing, as we get more aware, there's more awareness about mental health. And so consider counseling if you get to a point where you feel like you're not able to help your child the best way you know how. So seeking help with a professional. Next slide. And we have another trivia question. So this is going to be staying up to date on wellness and dental checks. So that's tip number 7. How often should children aged 3 and up have a wellness check? So a wellness check, so not a dental check. Okay. So I gave her another chance there. So she said yearly, so once a year. So once you hit the age of 3, you should have a checkup annually. And you're not due for vaccines annually, but you should still have your checkup even those years when you're not due for vaccines. It's important for children to see their pediatrician and to have health maintenance, which is a way to prevent chronic illnesses, and to make sure they're up to date with their vaccines, routine blood work, which children for the most part do not need a bunch of blood work, especially if they're healthy. But there are some things that we check periodically throughout their growth to make sure that they're doing well. And, for example, making sure they're not anemic, checking their cholesterol, and then depending on family history, we may need to check for things like diabetes. So those are things that we also will talk about and discuss during those wellness checks. Hearing and vision screening, so children do need periodic hearing and vision screenings, and this is going to be a requirement for some schools, especially our kindergartners who are starting. So they definitely need to get a hearing and a vision check before they can start school. And then our sports physicals are generally required for sports play if you're in middle school age or higher. And so getting a sports physical is really important as well. You cannot play sports if you don't have a sports physical. So that's a part of your wellness check. You can get that done at the same time as your wellness check. So I always encourage my patients to, are you playing a sport? Okay, let's do your sport physical today. Okay, and then routine management of chronic illnesses. Some children have illnesses like asthma, some children have diabetes. Those are things that we're gonna continue to make sure that they're doing well and they're well controlled during their wellness check. And then dental checks should be every 6 months. So you wanna go to the dentist every 6 months or more frequent depending on if there's any issues. Next slide. Okay, so this is my last tip. And we're gonna talk about seeing the doctor when you're sick. So these are kind of reasons to go to the doctor if you're not feeling well. So the first thing is gonna be if you have a fever of 102 or higher, or if you're having persistent fever for more than 3 days. Most viral illnesses, you're gonna peak at that 3rd or 4th day. So if your fever is persistent beyond the 3rd day, then it could be something else going on, like a bacterial infection. Do you have an ear infection? Is there a pneumonia brewing? So we wanna definitely see you if you're having really high fever or if you're having a fever that's lasting for more than 3 days. Also, body aches, chills, joint pain, those could be signs of the flu or COVID or other infections. So we definitely wanna see you if you're having those symptoms as well. Very sore throat or neck pain with fever in particularly, we wanna make sure there's no signs of meningitis and that there's no signs of strep throat. Ear pain, so if we're having fever with ear pain, certainly there could be an ear infection there, so we wanna see you so we can check to make sure we treat you with antibiotics if you have an ear infection. And then exposure to illnesses, so if there's a known exposure to strep, COVID, or flu, and you're developing symptoms, it's very likely that you may have one of those illnesses, so we definitely wanna see you in those cases as well, so that we can test you and make sure we treat you appropriately. And then vomiting and diarrhea. So vomiting more than once or having frequent bouts of diarrhea, more than 3 loose stools within a 24-hour period. Those are usually signs of a stomach virus, so we wanna see you in the office, make sure you're staying hydrated, make sure you're not showing signs of dehydration, as well as to make sure there's not anything more concerning going on there. Decreased eating and drinking, so that usually goes in line with being sick. Most kids are not gonna eat and drink much when they are sick, so you wanna make sure to bring them in if there's signs of dehydration. So when kids are sick, eating is important, but the drinking is the most important thing when kids are sick, because you're gonna get dehydrated much more quickly than you will get malnourished from not eating. So the drinking is the most important part. And then any other concerning symptoms. So anything that you're concerned about and you wanna see your pediatrician for, you need to go and take them in to see the pediatrician so that they can make sure they address your concerns. And then lastly, staying home when you're sick. So I know kids definitely need to be in school, but if they have a fever or they're showing signs of illness, it is important to keep them home, get them to the doctor so that we can make sure we're treating them appropriately and we get them back to school as quickly as we can. But I would definitely encourage staying home, especially if we have fever, because that's another way for us to help protect other kids and to protect or prevent the spread of illness and infections. So staying home when you're sick is gonna be important as well. And then, I think I might have missed one of my questions. I didn't? I did them all? Oh, here it is, okay. I'm like, what did I do? Okay. But that is all the points I have. I'm sorry if I sound a little froggy. I actually was getting over a cold myself. But thank you guys, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those for you now. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. I don't know if this is a dumb question, but if you're exposed to like strep or something like that, is there something you can do to prevent symptoms from developing, or no?
So once you're exposed and you start to show symptoms, you're likely already infected. So that's why it's really important to kind of keep track of kids' symptoms. Usually that onset of fever can be the first symptom, or just chills, body aches, or just a slight sore throat. So, especially if there's been exposure, if we're in respiratory season, which we're getting there now, I would say to just take your kid in to be seen so that we can get them checked and started on treatment if needed. But most of the time, if you've been exposed and you started to show symptoms, it's likely that you're already infected because you've already been exposed.
So you mentioned 2 hours or less for screen time per day. Was it per day? Okay. Okay. So my question was, as a student, especially in high school, I'm not even talking about like watching TV or like videos or whatever. A lot of my work is given like online and on the screen. Would you count that as screen time, and how would I limit or be healthier with like my screen time? Because a lot of the work I have to do is on a computer or like my phone or something, because they're all given online.
That is very true. So the 2 hours is non-educational screen time. So that's like going on social media, being on your phone. So that's specifically what we're talking about. But you bring up a good point about children having a lot of technology involved in their teaching and their schooling today. And some ways that you can help with that, having blue light glasses are a great way to help protect their eyes from the lights from the computer, especially if they wear glasses. If you wear glasses, you can get a blue light film put onto the glasses or the lenses, and that helps protect the eyes from the screen time.
Yes, quick question.
Yes.
How can you tell the difference between allergies versus a cold and some sort of respiratory issue? Can you tell a difference? Or
You can, and sometimes it can be very blurred, especially in those first few days of symptoms, especially if fever hasn't started yet. Anytime there's fever involved, it's likely an infection, whether that's viral or bacterial. Allergies tend to be a chronic development, so something that's not necessarily progressing, but kind of lingering and staying for a long period of time. Most of the time with allergies, you'll have a lot of postnasal drainage. So usually first thing in the morning, you're kind of coughing up mucus, and then throughout the day, you're feeling better. And then at night, when you go to lay back down, you start having those symptoms again. With a cold or an infection, usually it's going to progress before it gets better. But if you have just kind of lingering symptoms, it's likely related to allergies, especially if the pollen count's high or it's during seasons or times when your allergies do start to act up. And if you're responding to things like Zyrtec or Claritin, Flonase, then it's likely your allergies acting up. And so usually it's going to be more of a chronic, persistent symptom, whether that's little sneezing, sniffles, cough, runny nose. Usually it's going to just be kind of consistent, and it lasts for a good period of time. With colds and viruses, you can have green yellow mucus. So that can be with bacterial illnesses or viral illnesses. So a myth that we sometimes hear is, oh, if you have green yellow mucus coming out of your nose, you have a bacterial infection. That's not necessarily true. It could still be a viral illness. But if you're having green yellow mucus coming from your nose, it's likely a virus, or it could be a sinus infection, and that's not typical for allergies.
Hi, thank you for being here today.
Of course.
My question, you mentioned earlier about the multivitamins for our youth.
Mm-hmm.
I have a son, very active physically, and so I've been looking for multivitamins that can fit him. Teenagers tend to buy like the teenage, but I find that they do have a lot of sugar, and a lot of the information that I've researched speak about the sugar content versus not really having all the vitamins and things that we're hoping it needs to have. Do you have a recommendation for a multivitamin, and should I also, on top of that, include a vitamin D?
Yes, so I would first look at the vitamin D content because sometimes they'll have 100% of your daily vitamin D in there. I like Ritual. It's a subscription online, but it's a clean-based vitamin, and I believe they do have children's vitamin as well. And so it doesn't have all the added sugars and additives in it like your typical Flintstone or gummy vitamins are going to have. The teen one a day, they're pretty good as well, doing like a capsule or a tablet over a gummy. So the gummies are definitely going to have lots of sugar in them, but I would look for actually a tablet or a capsule type vitamin for your older kids, and that was a good way to cut some of the sugar as well. But I like Ritual online subscription.
Question back here. Great information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now yes. You mentioned sugar, and there were two things. One, you noted that sugar increases inflammation, and sugar decreases something. I don't know if you remember where in your notes you had that.
It can decrease your immune system's function.
Okay, great. So my question is, people often say, like lots of breads and crackers and cookies. Obviously, cookies have sugar, but the carbs or the breads, what's your perspective on that? Would that all be lumped under sugar as well?
Technically, yes. So your high carbohydrate, starchy foods are going to be high in sugar. So they're more complex sugars, so they're not simple sugars, but it's still sugar, and your body's going to break it down. And if you're not using that energy, it's going to turn to fat. So not just actual sugar added to foods, but also your starch intake. So things like rice, pasta, potatoes, those are things that are going to be rich in starch and carbohydrates. So you do want to limit those in your children's diet. And so a lot of times parents will say, well, they're still hungry after they've eaten their dinner. I would stick to going back for more vegetables and maybe more lean meats before allowing them to have more rice, potatoes, or pasta when they're going for seconds. So definitely want to include those starches in there when we're talking about sugar.
And then one last quick question. Any additional tips on how to help your children if they have high sugar cravings? Obviously, kid is a kid. They're going to love to eat candy and sweets. Any additional tips on how to break that habit from now and transition them?
So I would say it's something that's definitely not going to happen overnight. So I would increase protein in the diet. More protein in the diet is going to help to make you feel full and feel full for longer. And so also eating whole grains, which are a great source of good carbohydrates. So those are ways to kind of help to reduce those cravings. One of the things I like to talk about, especially with my little kiddos, is to start from young of not introducing them to a lot of sugary foods. And so I tell my kiddos when they do start eating, or the parents, they don't need juice. You don't have to give your child juice at all. Once they have had those things, they're going to want to have it all the time, and they can't miss what they haven't had. So I do recommend, instilling those things very young. But if we've already kind of been having a more sugary diet, then I would just slowly try to decrease that, or just kind of replacing those snacks with more healthy snacks, but they still kind of give you that, they'll still kind of take away that craving. So you want to look at the sugar content and just get things that are lower in sugar to start with before we kind of go sugar-free. So I wouldn't just go straight to doing sugar-free. I think, having a drastic change like that is not going to be super helpful, but just kind of slowly instilling that lifestyle change into your child is going to be important. It can. So increasing sugar in your diet is also going to work at increasing your cholesterol, but also, fatty foods, when we break that down in our bodies, that's also going to increase your cholesterol as well. So eating a diet high in sugar, high in fat, or bad fats, and then eating a diet that's high in salt, all of those things are going to increase your risk for diabetes, hypertension, or high cholesterol, and increasing your cholesterol, or increasing your blood pressure.
Yes, you touched a little on the A1C, and so I need to know, like, when does it become alarming for children? The rate, the level of the child's A1C.
So we use the same guidelines for diagnosing diabetes and prediabetes that we do for adults with children. We don't routinely check A1Cs in children unless there's any concern for obesity, or if we see signs on an exam that may indicate that the sugar levels are not being well controlled. So we still use the same, the 5.7 for pre-diabetics, and then the 6.5 and up for diabetes, or 6.7. So we use the same scale. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I did also bring some health maintenance cards. I do have a stationery company, and I make these health and wellness cards. So I brought one for everybody who's here. And inside the cards, there's 3 cards. One of them is a self-care card. And so you just kind of write down things that you've done for yourself for self-care. The second card in there is a medication card. So if you take any medications, you can write down what medications you take, and you can keep that card with you. That's a great way to let your doctor know what medications you're taking. You can just take that card to the doctor with you. And then the last card is looking at different routine health maintenance that adults need. So this card's for adults, but some of those things we do for children too. Of course. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark. This was another amazing presentation. Amazing. We know that healthy children make healthy students, and that is our focus. And this is how we're supporting our youth in their educational journey. We want to make sure that they are healthy and that we know what we can do to support our students. It's not just on them, but it's on us. Our next presenter is Tiffany Reece. Tiffany is 16 years old. She is a high school junior attending Etowah High School in Cherokee County School District. Tiffany is a member of Grace Fellowship. She's a hardworking student, an honor student at her local high school. She has an interest in sports medicine, which she serves on the sports medicine team at her school. She is a member of the National Honor Society, the National Spanish Honor Society, National English Honor Society, and who? Oh, also a member of the board of HOSA, which is Health Occupation Students Association, since she wants to study health occupations in medicine when she goes to college. Please put your hands together and welcome Tiffany.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, JJ. So, today I am here to give a presentation on the tips and tricks I've learned about being a better student through, my whole student career, mostly in my high school age. Is no one working the... Psst. If I could go ahead and get started. So, today I will be going through 7 major topics that I think are perfect for students nowadays to learn on being a better student. So learning how to schedule, manage grades, befriending your teacher, finding your passions, joining clubs, leaning on friends, putting in effort. Okay? So our first topic, scheduling. Okay. So scheduling, I feel like, is a very important thing to learn as a student. I feel like it can really help you. It can really help you manage everything in your whole school career, right? So first, make a routine. I've learned this through lots of failed like mornings and afternoons where I didn't prepare enough. Making a routine can be really helpful to keep everything in your day in line, right? Keeping track of your schedule. I had a picture before where it had everything written out on a schedule. I like to keep a planner. I mean, not everybody likes to keep a planner. Sometimes if you like to use your phone a lot, there are plenty of apps you can use. Like one I know is very helpful is called Time Tree. If you have a busy day, put everything down, write everything out. Because I know, personally, you heard all the clubs and stuff that my mom listed out. It can get overwhelming and you forget lots of things. If you have meetings, if you have events that you want to go to, write everything out. Your tests, your homework, everything. Leave yourself free time. You can often get overwhelmed if you have a lot of stuff that you have to do. And leaving yourself free time, I think, is very important so you don't get overwhelmed and you don't get stressed out. That's one of my biggest problems is I plan a lot of stuff and I end up getting stressed out from how much I have to do. And I think leaving yourself free time is very important so you can have a time to relax and just, chill out after you've done a bunch of work. And finally, get good sleep. I know there is a lot of talk of this in the two presentations before me, how she said we needed 8 to 10 hours of sleep. It is very important because going through your day exhausted is just horrible and it just makes your whole class day worse. Trust me, I know from lots of experience. Our next topic, managing your grades, okay? Okay, so to help manage your grades, I would say check your grades often to see progress. I mean, me personally, I just automatically always check my grades because they're just always on my mind. I'm always what's gonna affect my grade? How is this gonna affect my grade? Not a lot of people are like that. So I'm just saying now, check your grades often because sometimes things can affect your grades in ways that you did not expect, Check for assignments early. So this kind of ties back in with scheduling. It can help you plan things out. And this can also help you know when to plan for other events that you want to go to. If you know you want to go to an event on Friday, check for assignments that you have on Thursday or Friday so you can do them early or do them before so that you know that, you can get everything done and have free time and have enough time so you're not overstressing yourself. If your grade is going down, this also goes in with checking your grades. If your grade's going down and you see that, ask for more opportunities. Ask for extra credit. Ask for opportunities, if there's going to be more assignments so you can bring your grade up, think ahead. Our next topic will befriend your teacher. So this may sound very strange. I don't mean become besties with your teacher and text them all day and, follow them on Instagram or anything. I just mean build trust with your teacher, right? So this can be very helpful. So when you're first get to your class, I'd say leave a good impression. And to do this, a very helpful way is participating in class, right? So if you come to class, you come ready, you seem eager to learn, you participate in class, you ask questions, this tells the teacher that you want to know what you're doing. You want to learn, that you want to be in their class. In this way, they're very eager to help you. They're eager to give you advice. They're eager to give you more resources. And this is another thing, lean on them for resources and for help. I have had many teachers where I've had a closer relationship than I've had with other teachers, right? So the teachers that I've had better relationships with, they've been a lot easier on me. Like this, let me slow down so I can explain. So good teachers will build relationships with you, right? And this is very helpful. Say you're having a bad day. Say you're having it's just going terrible for you, or you had a bad night last night, and you're like, listen, Mr. Johnson, I just had a terrible night last night, and I wasn't able to complete your homework, but you know me. You know I normally like to get your homework in. Mr. Johnson's going to be like, you know what? I do know you. You're a good student, and hey, it's okay. I know how it is. That's what I mean by befriend your teacher. Build a trust so that they know that you're not just always a student that's slacking off. Because if your teacher doesn't know you, they can't know if you're lying. They can't know how you are, you know? So that's why I say befriend your teacher, because they can be very useful, very helpful, and they will gladly give you lots of resources. That's their job, you know? So don't be afraid to speak up in class if you don't know something or if they're going too fast. I've learned this because I used to hate talking, especially in a quiet class when nobody talks. But I've learned just speak up, because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to tell you the right answer, right? Exactly. They're going to tell you the right answer, and you're going to now know how to do it. So just speak up, lean on your teacher. Next topic, find your passions, okay? Okay, I feel like finding a passion in school is very important because, one, this could lead to finding out what you want to do for the rest of your life in school. And two, it can just help you enjoy school more. I know tons of people are like, oh, I hate going to school. Oh, I don't want to be there. But finding a passion, say you find a club that you want to do, if that's drama or chess club or cheer, finding what you want to do and finding a club or a group that does what you do, it can help you find a community, people to sit with at lunch, people to talk to every day, people to relate to. This, finding your passion or a club, this can help you enjoy school more, you know? It can help you enjoy your days every day instead of dreading school. It doesn't have to be academic. There's tons of things that you can do at school every day. Moving on. Join clubs. This kind of branches off from finding passion. So once you find your passion, once you find what you like to do, you join a club for it. So, my last slide was more about finding something that you enjoy, to have a bit of a break, to have something that you like to do. Joining clubs, this can also so here's my first point. Think long term, okay? Especially this year, I have joined lots of clubs that I think will help make me look good on college applications or, to jobs in the future. Anything, especially once you find your passion and once you want to do something like healthcare. I want to do sports medicine, or physical therapy, right? So I've joined my sports med. I am an aide to my athletic trainers at my school, and I've joined HOSA, which is the healthcare club. So things like that can help you for college. It can help you for your job in the future. Stuff like this, joining clubs like this, it it builds your future. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah, we're saying, okay. And another thing, don't feel the need to be in every single club. Like I'm saying, it looks great on your college application, but this doesn't mean that you have to be in every club, because once again, that will overwork you and you'll feel so stressed that there's just like no point, because then it's gonna lead to things that's just like depleting your mental health. Like it's not gonna work out, right? So me, I'm in a lot of stuff, but I'm not in too much stuff. I still leave myself free time to finish my homework. Like I have free days where I can hang out with people. I go to the games on Fridays, you know? Like it's not overwhelming. Yeah, it's not overwhelming, okay? And finally, don't do something if you don't enjoy it, you know? Don't just do it because it looks good, you know? If you find a club and it looks great on your application, but you absolutely dread going to the club, you hate going to the meetings, you hate doing it, don't do it. Find something else, because there are plenty of things, right? Like me, I'm in National Honors Spanish Society, right? I do that because I enjoy Spanish class. And I'm like, if I enjoy it, I might as well get recognition for it, you know? Honor Society, I like English class, so I might as well be in National Honors English Society because I get good grades in there. It's stuff like that. Like, think about it and think what you want to be recognized for. If you're good at something, join a club for it. Okay, next. Okay, this one I think is also very important. Leaning on your friends. This doesn't mean cheating. I'm not saying ask all your smart friends for answers. That's not what I mean, okay? I've had a few times in my past, in full honesty, I've asked for answers in the past, but I've learned that doesn't help me. I'm just saying the truth, because listen. I've asked for answers in the past, but then I found out once it came to the test, I didn't know anything because all I did was ask for answers. So my thing is, ask for help. Don't ask for answers. If you have a friend who knows what they're doing, ask them how did they do it. Don't ask what they, ask for their help. Now, your friends, they're in the same boat as you, okay? You have plenty of friends who are in your class, and they're learning the same things. Ask them if they understand. If they don't, you guys need to work together, ask the teacher, ask other students. This is what we call a community. This is why we need to lean on each other and help each other. Because a great example, I am in AP Pre-Calc right now, and me and my little group of friends, we sit together in a group. We all, the teacher tells us, oh, I'm going to teach you this, and then now you try the next one. We sit there, and we ask each other, oh, so how do we do this? How do we do that? Oh, we can do this? Okay, and we solve it, and then we get back to the teacher, and we find out we're right, because we collaborated. I highly suggest collaborating with people around you, because it's a world of difference. Because if you just sit there for hours trying to do your homework by yourself and you don't understand anything, are you gonna learn? No, you're not gonna learn if you don't know what you're doing. You need to ask somebody who knows what they're doing so they can teach you, okay? That's why I suggest study groups, study partners, even if it's just sitting on FaceTime with your friend, doing your math homework together. It helps because you're going way faster than if you just sat there not knowing what you're doing. Yeah, I think that's my full point that I wanted to make. And my final thing. Put in effort. If you if you don't try on anything, what are you gonna gain? Absolutely nothing. And then you're just gonna have nothing in your future. You need to try. Try once, please. Okay, look, don't give up easily. You know, if you're what does that say? Oh well, and then leave it alone, you're not gonna gain anything. Please just try a little bit. Try, look it up.
read more about it, figure out more about it, you know? Don't skip something without trying. If something looks confusing, at least give it a few thoughts. Look back in your notes, see what you learned in class, and then try to apply it. Like, you can't just skip, you know? I'm talking very passionately right now because this is all stuff that is from my past and current and now that I've struggled with, and I really want to give on the impression you guys need to learn this. Justin, are you paying attention to me? Okay, good. I need to make sure you learn this because this is your future, okay? And I want you to be successful. And finally, this is my biggest problem in my whole entire life. You see, my biggest problem, do not procrastinate. Don't. Because procrastinating, it leads to every single problem that I just said in this whole entire presentation, right? Don't procrastinate because all it does is cause you stress, it lowers your grades, it lowers what your teachers think of you. It just causes all the problems in the world, right? So my thing with procrastinating, mine is just that, I never want to start things. I never want to get things started, you know? So even if it's just, a little bit, if you want to watch TV, you know, it's hard, but just at least pull something out. If you want to throw on the TV, throw on some music, take out your homework while you have that on. At least try to get something started. At least try to look at it. Get your eyes on it. You know what I'm saying? Just try. Get it started. Don't just push it off until this episode ends. Don't push it off until you finish this song. Start it while you're doing something. And then while you're working, you can be like, man, I really don't get this. Pause, and then continue. Don't procrastinate. Don't ever push things off because it just causes a whole world of problems. It causes you to be behind. It causes you to be overwhelmed. It causes your work to pile up. Even if your teacher gives you an extension, you have more homework for the next day plus your old homework. You don't want to pile up. Don't ever procrastinate. Stay on top of your things. And that goes back to scheduling. That goes back to, working with other people. Because if you're behind and everybody else is ahead, nobody's going to want to work with you on stuff that they did last week that you're still trying to figure out because you procrastinated on it, okay? So just follow all these steps pretty please. And then you'll be great. You'll be great, you know? I'm trying myself to work on all of these things. So if we just all work together, guys, let's all become better students. Now, this is a quote. This is a quote from Michelle Obama. Success is only meaningful and enjoyable if it feels like your own. And I feel like this quote really relates back to everything, right? This relates back to don't cheat. This relates back to trying, putting in your own effort. This relates, you can do it. Just, try. Put in your own effort. And you'll feel great after. If you've worked on all your homework all week, and this led to you getting a 96 on your test, you're gonna be like, yeah, I did that. What's up? I did that. You're gonna feel amazing. So that's why I'm saying this. And the final slide. Yeah, go be great students. Were there any questions? I feel like there's no. Oh, you have a question? Okay.
I have a comment.
Comment.
I just want to commend you, beyond what you know, because right now I'm a grad student, and what you're doing, you are going to be on top. Because it starts from now, and the fact that you recognize, don't procrastinate, ask for help, build bonds with your teacher. It's a lot more intimidating with the professors in college, but the things that you do non-verbally, they still notice. When you go to class, I didn't really speak. I'm not a speaker. But I sit in the front. I show up every day. If they want to have maybe like a trivia question. I might try out the trivia question. So the days that I don't show up, they're like, oh, remind me of your name again. And they're like, you weren't here and you're always here. Or if maybe an assignment slipped me, like I forgot to put it on my planner, I get an email. You usually turn this assignment in early. What happened? I explain, they give me an extension. It sets you up for success forever. I'm telling you, in your undergrad, graduate, in the workplace, you're doing amazing. Continue doing amazing.
Yes. Sorry.
So let's say you're a student athlete, right?
Yeah.
And you have a game Friday.
Yeah.
Actually, no, Thursday.
Thursday. Got it.
But you also got like a bunch of homework to do, and you don't get home and like till late. What would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah.
I think this goes back to what I was saying about, I think it was in managing your grades, but this is why I say check for assignments early, because if you never check to like for anything that you have to do and you wait until you're assigned, that's what can cause like you to be, oh man, I have all this homework today and I didn't know about it until today. It's like some of it I feel like you can know about if you check about it first, and then that's why you try to get other things done first so that you can, you can try to get ahead, you know, try as much as you can to stay ahead. If anything, just ask. If you don't see anything on like whatever, like what website or like whatever type of app platform, whatever type of platform your school has, if you don't see anything, if it really like does cause that much of a problem, I would say ask your teacher, because I do. I ask my teachers all the time. I'm like, is there anything that's going to be happening, especially when I'm going to be absent? I always ask if there's anything that I need to like make sure that I get done. But yeah, just ask or check ahead. That's the best thing that you can do for late nights like that. Yes.
You make mention that you were one of the students who sat and wanted to ask questions and didn't.
Mm-hmm.
What motivated you to start asking questions, and how did you go about doing that? Because if you have somebody in your midst that does not like to ask questions but wants information but is too timid to ask questions, that's to your teacher, what would you say to that student?
Honestly, y'all are getting called out right now. Honestly, I feel like what began my desire to speak up in class was honestly my dad, because he stressed a lot, like, oh, don't be afraid to ask the teacher, because one, that's their job. Their job is to literally answer you. Like, you're not causing a burden. That was my thing. I always felt like I was like causing a problem, asking them stuff that they just taught me. But like, no, like, you shouldn't be ashamed of asking for more clarification, because their job is to teach, not say one thing one time and then you're supposed to understand. Like, it's supposed to be a continuous journey, so you're supposed to keep asking things, right? And what I would say is honestly, like, just try it, because I'd have like a one random class with like one kid who was brave enough to ask a question, and all I would see would happen is that they just got their question answered. And like nobody would say, like, it's not like everybody's gonna laugh at you for like, you know. Have you had an experience otherwise? Exactly. So I'm just saying, I mean, and most of the time, other people have the same questions. Like, I know teachers say that, and you're like, nah, but like, you really, because people have asked questions and I'm like, oh, thank God, because I didn't want to ask that question, you know? So just ask, or if anything, if it's like an anxiety thing or like just really shy, I would at least say ask the teacher on your own once the teacher is done teaching. You know, whatever you can do, make sure you understand like the what's the word I'm thinking of? The subject, yeah. The information, the concept, anything. Just that's the most important part, is making sure that you understand so that you can apply it and stuff like tests and quizzes. But yeah, just try it, honestly. Like if the teacher has that one moment where they're teaching and they're like, and so x equals, just raise your hand and say 2 if you know it's 2. If it's not 2, then she'll be like, not quite, and then she'll say it's 3, you know? And like, that's it, that's all that's gonna happen. Like, that's all that's really gonna happen, and it's not that bad, it's not that scary. Like, nobody knew, obviously, if they weren't raising their hands. So I feel like don't be shy about it. Got it? Yeah? Okay, cool.
Very nice, very nice. I'm so proud of you. Oh, y'all, she has grown so much. She's completely changed. Now you're seeing the side of her that we see at home. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this all up and bring it to a close with just talking to parents about your part now, how you can support your child in school. Like I said, school is different now than it used to be when we were teenagers. So I'm just going to run through this quicker and emphasize just a couple parts. First of all, check out these websites. If you are a parent with a student in a public school in Georgia, you want to make these websites your friend, especially gadoe.org. That is the Georgia Department of Education. You can find out anything about schools in Georgia on that website. The one that says georgiastandards.org, that's where you find out exactly what they're supposed to be learning in all of their classes. And so if your child is confused, you can look there, start there, then figure out, how do I get them to understand what these standards are? Because, you know, they might be struggling. Or you can use that information when you're talking to the teacher about where your child is having trouble. The other ones below are just the district websites. So I know that in here we have students in Gwinnett, we have students in Cobb, and also in Cherokee. Bookmark your district website. You want to start there. There's plenty. Just give yourself maybe 30 minutes a couple times a week to just explore. Look around and see what information they have on there that you will want to know as well. But the DOE covers all of the school districts in the entire state, and I know that each school district will have their own fine things, but we all fall in line with the DOE, okay? Who do you know at your children's school? You should know your children's teachers. If not by face, definitely by name. I've been in the office before where a parent comes to check their child out for like a doctor's appointment, and the secretaries will say, who's your child's teacher? And they don't know. I've heard a parent say they're either in 2nd grade or 3rd grade. How do you not know that? I'm not sure, but it happens. I've been called Miss Lewis, I've been called Miss Jones, I've been called, I'm your child's teacher, I've been teaching them for 8 months. It's been Reece, it's never changed. But that is a situation. So make sure you know. I know high school is different because your kids have 7 different teachers, right? But make sure you know if you need to ask a question, where to find their information online so that you can send an email. Know who the principal is. Know the assistant principals, secretaries. In high school, definitely know the school counselor. That is going to be your connection when they're ready to start doing college applications, community services. That's where you want to start. There are a wealth of information. If your child has any sort of health conditions, like full disclosure, everybody here knows that Tiffany has type 1 diabetes. She and the school nurse, they are BFFs. They, literally love each other. I know that if I'm getting an alert on my phone that, our sugars are high, I call Nurse Kathy calls Tiffany. It's like a 3-way thing. But it's such an easy relationship, and I feel comfortable knowing that Nurse Kathy is taking care of her. I'll send Tiffany a text, say, go see Nurse Kathy and have her look at, something. That's the relationship you want with your children's people at their school. Make sure you know several things. You need to know what policies are in place at your school, especially when it comes to discipline. Ignorance or saying you didn't know does not excuse them if they accidentally get involved in something or in the wrong place at the wrong time or something happens. Make sure you know what is in the code of conduct at your school or district, because if they're caught doing something and your child says, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do this, you're also liable, because you're the parent. You should know what is in the code of conduct, and therefore your child will still be applied a consequence if it were to come down to a situation like that. I suggest checking out to see if your school or school district has a parent Facebook group, but join it with caution. Sometimes too much misery loves company, and then you get into a whole lot of complaining and whining and things that you really, but on the other hand, sometimes you find out things that you would not have known, like certain events coming up or applications and things like that, that you want to, you know, be a step ahead of. That's just a tidbit from the inside. There is no stigma in education. You might, next one. Oh, I'm sorry that these are so light. I apologize that you can't really see that from there. But I just want to throw out a couple of things for you. In education, nothing is a taboo, like Dr. Clark said earlier, or you said, somebody mentioned taboo words. Taboo words to some parents are things like special education, interventions, counseling, early intervention. We have those things available in all schools, and they're free of charge to parents. Take advantage if your child needs it. If I've been a special education teacher before I was a general ed classroom teacher, and I've had some children who qualified for additional support, educational services with an IEP, and it was going to be so good for them to help them be successful, and the parents said, no thanks, I don't want them labeled. And the child would continue to struggle and struggle and fail and fail and fail, only because the parent's ego got in the way of getting that child the help. If your child needs help and a teacher meets with you and says, this is this, or this has been a concern, this is what I've done, but I think they need more, go with it, try it. What's the worst that can happen? Like Tiffany said, the worst that can happen is that they do better. You see what I'm saying? So if they're in tutoring, if there's morning tutoring or afternoon tutoring or lunchtime, the teacher is willing to meet with them to help with math, jump in on it. Take advantage of every single thing. Brandon took pre-calc. I think it was the same teacher that Tiffany has. And I remember Brandon used to say, you know, I'm going to see Ms. Schmidt at lunchtime today because I'm having trouble with this unit. He would take his lunch and he would sit there in front of Ms. Schmidt and make his sandwich while she's, you know, going through it with him. And sure enough, he'd get an A on the test. Take advantage of every help that you can get. Every A, sometimes an A is a hard-earned. You got to work for it, but do what you can. Establish open communication with your children's teachers, especially when they're young. Listen to the teachers. Please listen, 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 and ask many questions. If you don't understand what the teacher's saying, say that. Sometimes teachers like to throw out a whole bunch of fancy words that mean nothing to parents. But if you don't understand, say, you know, I hear you, but I just don't understand. Can you say it a different way? It's okay. I want to do that. Check in sometimes. Hello, screen person. Check in with your children's teachers and say, hey, just checking in, see how they're doing, see how things are going. That's never a bother. Always take a minute to do that. If your district has an app that you can put on your phone, put it on your phone. You don't have to leave the notifications on, but put it on your phone so you stay informed. A lot of things change in the school year that you want to know about. So make sure that you're doing that so you're staying current with what's happening. Ask for examples of the expected work. If your child doesn't know what to do on homework and you don't know what to help them, ask the teacher, can you send me an example of what it's supposed to look like? Teachers would love to do that. That makes me giddy with excitement. Tell me you want me this. I will flood your email with a whole bunch of things for you to look at. So make sure you ask for that. Ask for what you can do at home to help. How can I help them with their reading? Because, I had one student last year. She gave her parents the run around every evening it was time to read. Every evening. She read great for me. But at home, she found everything else to do. What can we do at home to help? I sat with them and we created a plan. Things turned around. So make sure you do that. One last selfish thing, not selfish for me, but for the students, ask the teachers, what do you need for the class that I might be able to help with? Last week, I needed playground equipment. So a parent went to Walmart, bought a playground ball and some jump ropes. Cost maybe $5. We loved it. Everybody was excited. So anything you can support your students' class with, please do that. Get involved with things at their school, and get your kids involved. Tiffany mentioned joining clubs and activities. You're also signing up. I want you to know that. When your kids sign up for things, you're also on the list because you got to donate, you got to drive them, you got to pick them up, you got to carry their friends, you got to pick up the other one from so-and-so house and bring all of them back home. Yeah, it involves you too. Understand that it is a sacrifice you're making and that it is towards their future. Colleges look at how involved your child is when they're applying for college. Do they just go to class or do they get involved in the life of the school? One more thing, please speak positively about your children's school and the staff who works there in front of your kids. Kids repeat everything they hear at home. I've had many children who say, my mom said, or my dad said, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure you weren't supposed to say that out loud. But just make sure that, even if you do have a complaint, don't say it to the child. Call the school and address it appropriately and have that situation, handled. But remember also that your children will need letters of recommendations from school staff. And they're probably going to pick their favorite teachers. Make sure, like Tiffany said, they have established a relationship with teachers that are important. Core subjects, let me give you this little hint. Core subjects are your maths, your English, your sciences. Sometimes history, but definitely those three. You want to have at least one in every area that is a good mentor and a support for your child when they're ready to apply for college. They've got to write a good letter for your kid, so make sure that they know them very well. And the last thing I want to address, and this goes for everybody, understand school safety. And I mentioned this before. Code red is where there is a threat inside of the building and the building is in lockdown mode. We practice those once every other month or so. A code yellow is where there's a threat outside, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood. The school is locked down, so we can move around the building, but we can't go outside. Your child might come home and say, we had a code red today. It might mean it's a drill. It may not mean that something really happened. Or it could be that it was a faulty alarm. We had that 2 years ago where it went off, and then as soon as it stopped, it went off again, and we all panicked because it went on for like 20 minutes straight. And come to find out, it happened in every single Cobb County school at the exact same time. And it was with the alarm company, but we didn't know, and the principals didn't know, but we found out later. But what I'm trying to say is it is a frightening experience, and we've got to learn to support our kids, especially the younger ones, through those. If you have a younger child and they come home and say, we had a code red today, give them a moment. Ask, how did it make you feel? What did you and your class do? Okay, and then reassure them that your teachers and school staff are doing everything they can to keep you safe. And then maybe at that time, stop and do a little prayer just to reassure them that, God is with you, and we pray and ask God to protect you every day. Sometimes that is enough to just soothe them so that they are comfortable. And then the last thing, especially for the older kids, well, it happens in elementary too. Bullying is a hot topic everywhere. Bullying prevention, I wasn't finished. Bullying prevention, actually, I learned this in one of my classes this summer, is federally mandated, which means there are federal laws against bullying, and there are guidelines with which students can report or school staff have to handle bullying. So if your child comes home and claims that, you know, they're being bullied, sometimes there's a misuse of the word, and yeah, they might be taunted or teased, but it might not be bullying, but there is a distinct definition. Make sure that you check out stopbullying.org, stopbullying.gov, and see if anything matches or lines up with what your child is saying. Contact the school, preferably the counselor or principal, document everything, and then action should be taken towards solving that issue. No child should be bullied. It's not a part of growing up, and it doesn't make you a stronger, better person. It does not. It does not build character. None of those things. So we want to make sure all of our children feel safe and supported. You have no kids in school? There are some things you can do to help. Number one, you can support their school fundraisers or their team fundraisers. They might be selling cookies or popcorn for their football team, baseball team. Buy some. You don't have to like popcorn. Buy it and give it to somebody else who likes it. But support what they're doing. When Jordan starts selling things to support his band, I'm buying it. Why? Because I'm supporting him. So make sure that kids too, when you guys have fundraisers, bring it to the church and ask every single person. And if they say no, you tell me that they said no. Do your best whenever you can to attend their events. These are important things. If they're having a band concert or an awards presentation or an awards ceremony or something, you know, try to go. Even if it's just one thing that you could do for the year, try to go. And if you kids let us know, we will do our best to support you where we can. And then commit. Commit to praying for their success. Every Sabbath we have class, every single Sabbath, I pray for their success in school. I want for everything they try to turn out like gold. I want them to be successful at everything they try. I want to pray for their friendships, that God put the right people in their lives. It's so important. Commit to praying for their mental and physical health. Commit to praying for the school staff that works at their school, and commit to praying for their safety. Amen? That's our jobs as parents. Now, we did fundraising to support a local school. We looked for Title I schools, which have a great percentage of free and reduced lunch recipients. We chose Pleasantdale Elementary School, which is right up the street from us, a few miles from here. Pleasantdale Elementary School is a Title I school. It had about 82% of the students qualifying for free or reduced lunch, which means their parents have a lower income that they're working with. There is a teacher at that school. Her name is Miss Francois. She put a project up on Donors Choose because she is having to provide most of the school supplies for her entire class. Kids are coming, their parents cannot afford that. That's what we set out to do. So this project, she says, the beginning of the school year is the time when I take notice of how my students and their families may struggle to purchase items on the school supply list. I try my best to alleviate that by providing as much as I can at the start of the school year and throughout. All students should feel the advantage of being fully prepared for the start of the school year and have access to every resource that would prepare them for a successful school year. When students' basics needs are met, then they are able to focus their time and effort on one task, being a student. So we have fully funded her project with over $260 worth of school supplies. So I thank you all for donating and for giving and supporting this. I love this kind of stuff. Today was amazing. I know we went long, but thank you, every presenter. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everyone, for being here and supporting this.